It started with a scream, sharp and urgent, cutting through the stillness of the hallway like a knife. At first, it was almost disorienting, so sudden and unexpected that the mind struggles to process it immediately. A scream is not just a sound. It carries layers of meaning, intensity, and emotion, all compressed into a single moment. It demands attention. It pulls every fiber of your being into alertness. There's something primal about it, something that resonates deep in the human nervous system, signaling danger, distress, or an urgent call for help. Unlike ordinary noises that fade into the background, a scream refuses to be ignored. It forces awareness, and when it comes in the quiet of a night or the emptiness of a long hallway, it becomes impossible to dismiss. Every person who has ever heard a scream instinctively reacts. Heart rates spike, adrenaline surges, senses sharpen, and the mind races to assess what is happening and what must be done. In that moment, the scream becomes more than sound. It becomes a signal that something is profoundly wrong. It is both a warning and a plea, a raw expression of fear or pain that transcends words. The unique quality of a scream lies in its unpredictability. Unlike a conversation or the predictable thrum of footsteps, a scream is sudden and chaotic. Its abruptness triggers the brain's fight-or-flight response in a fraction of a second. The auditory system instantly recognizes the difference between normal environmental sounds and human distress signals. When a scream pierces the air, every muscle tightens, every sense heightens, and even people who are far away or distracted cannot ignore it. This is why the scream is such a powerful narrative device. It conveys urgency, stakes, and emotion immediately, without explanation or context. You don't need to see the source of the scream to understand its gravity. You know instinctively that something dangerous, painful, or terrifying is occurring. It creates tension, compels attention, and demands action. The scream in the hallway is no different. Its sudden eruption into the quiet space transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, turning a mundane corridor into a stage for fear, suspense, and the unknown. A scream also carries information beyond just its volume or tone. The duration, pitch, and intensity reveal something about the person, the situation, and the level of threat. A short, sharp scream might indicate surprise or panic. A prolonged, escalating scream may indicate terror or severe distress. An experienced listener can detect subtle cues within the scream, deciphering urgency and potential danger even without visual confirmation. For a trained Navy SEAL, this is crucial. Every sound is data, every nuance significant. The scream in the hallway is not just an emotional reaction. It is a signal to interpret, analyze, and respond. The body of the person screaming communicates their state more accurately than words could. Is the scream sustained or broken? Is it muffled or raw? Each element tells a story. The listener's mind, conditioned by rigorous training, picks up these subtleties instinctively. A scream becomes more than a cry. It becomes a map to navigate the unknown, a cue to act with precision and urgency. In addition to the immediate physiological and psychological impact, a scream also alters the perception of space. The hallway, normally unremarkable, becomes charged with tension and danger. The echo of the scream bounces off walls, making the space feel larger, emptier, and more foreboding. Every corner, shadow, and doorway becomes a potential source of threat. Sound transforms the environment, creating an atmosphere of suspense and uncertainty. A scream in an enclosed space like a hallway amplifies this effect, carrying both direction and emotion. It stretches time in the mind of the listener, making seconds feel longer, forcing heightened awareness, and creating a mental rehearsal of possible scenarios. This is why moments that begin with a scream are so memorable. They trigger both instinct and imagination simultaneously, combining raw emotion with analytical assessment. The scream also connects to the human need for connection and response. Hearing someone in distress naturally compels attention and action. It is impossible to remain indifferent because at a fundamental level, Humans are wired to respond to others' pain and fear. A scream in a hallway does not just create tension. It invokes empathy, fear, and moral urgency. Even if the listener is trained to assess before acting, the emotional impact is undeniable. It drives a response that is both instinctive and deliberate. Every sound counts, and every detail matters. The hallway, at first glance, seems ordinary, just another corridor, unremarkable, lined with doors and lit by dull overhead lights. But in moments like these, ordinary spaces take on extraordinary significance. A hallway is designed for movement, a conduit connecting one place to another, often unnoticed and overlooked. People pass through it without thinking, their attention focused on destinations rather than the space itself. Yet when a scream cuts through that familiarity, the hallway transforms. It becomes a stage for fear, tension, and uncertainty. The walls that once seemed neutral now frame a scene charged with danger. Shadows stretch in corners, light flickers or reflects off surfaces, and every doorway becomes a potential hiding place. Every stretch of empty floor a place where something could emerge. The ordinary turns threatening simply through the lens of sound and anticipation. The nature of a hallway intensifies the perception of sound. It channels noise, amplifying every echo, every variation in tone. A scream in a wide-open room dissipates differently. It might be powerful but diffuse, blending with ambient sounds. In a hallway, however, the confined walls act almost like instruments, shaping the sound and projecting it along the length of the corridor. Each echo rebounds, layering the original cry with slight delays, creating an unsettling rhythm that fills the listener's awareness. This effect is more than auditory, it's psychological. The mind interprets the space as larger, emptier, and more menacing than it may actually be. The hallway becomes a corridor of suspense, and the scream seems to travel endlessly, reaching into every shadow and corner. A trained observer like a Navy SEAL understands these dynamics instinctively. They recognize that sound behaves differently in narrow spaces, that echoes can mislead about the direction of a source, and that perception of space is as critical as perception of threat. Every step, every doorway, and every corner must be assessed carefully. The physical characteristics of the hallway also matter. The walls might be smooth or textured, the flooring might be carpeted or tiled, each surface changing the way sound travels. Lighting plays a role as well. Dim or flickering lights cast ambiguous shadows, heightening uncertainty. The hallway becomes a corridor of questions. Who is there? What caused the scream? And what could happen next? The mind fills in gaps, imagining possibilities, many of them dangerous. Even the familiarity of the space can become a liability. A hallway known well can still harbor unseen threats, and the scream forces the listener to reevaluate what they assumed about safety. Spaces that once felt mundane become unpredictable, demanding caution and heightened awareness. Hallways are transitional spaces, yet in moments of crisis, they also serve as stages for confrontation. They restrict movement, forcing those who navigate them to make quick decisions about direction, cover, and approach. Unlike open spaces where multiple paths exist, a hallway channels movement, and this channeling creates both risk and opportunity. The person in distress may be trapped, limited in escape options, or in the line of sight of danger. Similarly, the responder must carefully choose their path, balancing speed with caution. Every footstep becomes meaningful, every pause deliberate. The geometry of the hallway dictates strategy. It is a space that, in ordinary life, encourages passivity, but under threat, it demands deliberate action. A hallway also has a psychological effect beyond its physical confines. It embodies anticipation. The length, the unknown doors, and the unseen corners make the listener hyper-aware. Time seems to stretch. One step toward danger feels longer. Each echo seems amplified, and the mind races with scenarios. In this way, the hallway itself becomes almost a character, shaping the narrative of fear and suspense. It is not just the scream that commands attention, but the way the space frames that scream. It restricts, amplifies, and directs the listener's experience. The hallway's ordinary familiarity contrasts sharply with the extraordinary danger introduced by the scream, creating a tension that is palpable, immediate, and gripping. Additionally, hallways in real life often carry traces of previous movement and life. The faint scuff of shoes, the creak of the floorboards, the subtle vibration of air conditioning, even the smell of the environment. Under normal circumstances, these details fade into the background, unnoticed. Under stress, they become amplified, layered onto the primary sound, creating a richer and more complex sensory environment. Every detail matters because they provide context and clues. For someone trained to notice, like a Navy SEAL, the hallway offers information beyond what the eyes see. It is a canvas of subtle signs, a door slightly ajar, a shadow that moves, a distant sound that does not belong. The scream brings the space to life, and the hallway, once just a passage, becomes a dynamic and consequential environment. Navy SEAL training is unlike any other. It is designed to transform ordinary people into extraordinary observers, listeners, and decision-makers. The focus is not just on strength or endurance, but on awareness, on noticing details that others would miss, on reading situations before they unfold, and on reacting with precision under extreme pressure. When a scream pierces the quiet of a hallway, a Navy SEAL does not hear it in the same way most people do. To most, it is shocking, frightening, and confusing. To a SEAL, it is data. Every aspect of the sound, the pitch, the cadence, the location, even the emotional undertone, is instantly processed, analyzed, and weighed for its relevance. Their ears are trained to pick up subtleties, to detect the slight variation in tone that might indicate the presence of more than one person or the difference between panic and feigned distress. Training rewires the brain to interpret not just what is happening, but what might happen next. This level of perception is built through rigorous conditioning. Navy SEALs endure exercises that simulate chaos, danger, and sensory overload. They are exposed to environments designed to confuse, overwhelm, and test the limits of their focus. In these conditions, they learn to separate signal from noise, to prioritize critical cues while ignoring distractions. The scream in the hallway is exactly the kind of signal that demands immediate attention. A SEAL's training ensures that the scream does not trigger panic, it triggers analysis. The brain immediately begins to process its origin, distance, and urgency. Micro-expressions, slight changes in posture, the echo of footsteps, and even the subtle vibration of the floor underfoot are all assessed in the instant after the sound occurs. Ordinary people might freeze or react emotionally, but for a SEAL, every moment is an opportunity to gather information and respond strategically. Listening is not passive in SEAL training. It is active, almost surgical. The ears are trained to capture layers of sound simultaneously: the scream, the background noises, the subtle cues hidden within. A SEAL can distinguish between someone running down the hallway and someone struggling to move, between someone screaming in genuine terror and someone attempting to manipulate perception. This ability to hear beyond the obvious is not instinct alone. It is honed through repetition, discipline, and intense focus. Every exercise, every drill, every mission scenario reinforces the skill, transforming it into a near-reflexive response. When the scream comes, the SEAL's mind immediately filters the information, interprets the context, and begins formulating possible courses of action. Observation is equally critical. Navy SEALs are trained to notice the smallest details in any environment. A slightly open door, a shadow out of place, a misplaced object. These are all potential indicators of what is happening. The hallway, ordinary to most people, becomes a landscape full of clues. A trained SEAL walks through it mentally, visualizing potential threats, escape routes, and positions of advantage. The scream acts as a catalyst, heightening awareness and focusing attention. Every element of the hallway, walls, doors, lighting, flooring, suddenly matters because it contributes to understanding the situation and planning the response. This level of detail is drilled into SEALs because, in real-life scenarios, lives depend on it. A single overlooked cue can mean the difference between success and failure, between safety and danger. Reacting is the final pillar. SEALs are trained not just to perceive, but to act decisively and effectively. Once the scream is heard and assessed, the next step is movement. Every action is deliberate. Approach, cover, positioning, timing. Training ensures that reflexes are paired with strategy, that instinct does not override judgment, and that fear does not paralyze. In the hallway, the SEAL moves with purpose, aware that the confined space limits options, but also channels opportunity. The mind continuously evaluates, updating the mental map as new auditory and visual information arrives. Split-second adjustments are made seamlessly, almost automatically, because the training has embedded decision-making under pressure into the very muscle memory of the operator. Navy SEAL training also emphasizes mental resilience. The scream in the hallway is not just an external threat. It challenges composure, focus, and emotional control. A SEAL has endured extreme stress, sensory deprivation, and intense fear in controlled training scenarios, preparing them to remain calm and analytical when real danger presents itself. This combination of mental fortitude, observational skill, and auditory acuity allows the SEAL to interpret the scream not as chaos, but as a set of clues, and to act with precision, confidence, and efficiency. The unseen threat is one of the most powerful elements of fear. Unlike a visible danger, it forces the mind to fill in gaps, to imagine what could be, and to anticipate what might strike next. When the scream echoes down the hallway, the person screaming is only half of the story. What terrifies the most is not just the sound, but the unknown source behind it. Humans are wired to fear what they cannot see. Our brains are constantly scanning for patterns, for threats, for anything that could harm us. And when the threat is invisible, the imagination kicks into overdrive. Every shadow, every creak of a floorboard, every flicker of light suddenly becomes loaded with potential danger. The hallway, once familiar, becomes an arena of anticipation, tension, and uncertainty. The mind starts to weigh possibilities. Who is there? What caused the scream? And what might happen next? The unseen threat amplifies fear because it engages not just the senses, but the imagination. For a Navy SEAL, the unseen threat is not paralyzing. It is a call to action. Training teaches that danger is often hidden and that reacting without complete information is sometimes necessary. The ability to operate in uncertainty, to assess incomplete data, and to act decisively is what separates instinct from strategy. When a scream pierces the hallway, the SEAL's mind immediately begins to construct mental models. Where could the threat be? What is its level of danger? And how might it react to movement or sound? Every step, every breath, every slight movement is calculated. The unseen threat does not create panic. It creates focus. It heightens the senses, sharpened by years of conditioning, to pick up the smallest cues that most people would miss. The mind and body work together to compensate for the lack of visual confirmation, relying on sound, smell, vibration, and intuition to locate and understand the danger. The fear of the unseen threat is universal. Even without formal training, humans instinctively respond to it. It triggers the fight-or-flight response, floods the body with adrenaline, and focuses attention on potential sources of harm. In a narrow hallway, these instincts are magnified. There is little room for escape, and every corner and doorway represents uncertainty. The scream signals that someone is in immediate danger, but it does not reveal the assailant, the cause, or the severity of the situation. This lack of clarity forces rapid mental calculations, pushing the mind to prioritize threats and plan possible responses. Each sound, each echo, each shift in air pressure becomes significant. The unseen threat transforms ordinary sensory input into critical intelligence, demanding acute awareness and constant vigilance. The presence of an unseen threat also changes how space is perceived and navigated. A hallway that was once a simple passage now becomes a calculated environment. A person moving through it must account for hidden dangers behind every door, in every shadow, and along the walls. Decisions about speed, direction, and cover become essential. The brain runs endless what-if scenarios, testing possibilities and predicting outcomes. Even small details that would normally be ignored, an open locker, a flickering light, a scuff mark on the floor, take on significance because they could indicate movement, presence, or concealment. The unseen threat forces a mental mapping of the environment that is far more detailed and intentional than casual perception. Sound is the primary guide when the threat is unseen. A scream provides not just information about distress, but also clues about location, urgency, and intensity. For a trained operator, subtle variations in the scream, its pitch, volume, timbre, and resonance, help triangulate the source and assess the situation. Coupled with ambient noises, the hum of ventilation, the creak of floorboards, the distant drip of water, these cues allow the mind to form a coherent picture, even when the threat remains hidden from sight. The brain constructs probabilities and prioritizes responses, preparing for multiple scenarios at once. Each decision carries weight because the unseen threat is unpredictable, capable of striking in any moment, and potentially lethal. The unseen threat also heightens psychological tension. It triggers hyperawareness, forcing the mind to process every stimulus, to anticipate danger, and to stay alert for extended periods. The scream in the hallway becomes a focal point, drawing attention to a crisis that is only partially understood. The lack of visual confirmation stretches time, elongates moments, and intensifies every sound and sensation. Fear is amplified not just by what is present, but by what might be, and the mind oscillates between assessment and anticipation, planning and reaction. The unknown becomes the true enemy, more menacing than any visible adversary, because it cannot be predicted, controlled, or easily confronted. Split-second decisions define the line between survival and disaster. In moments of extreme stress, there is no time to weigh options fully, no opportunity to deliberate for long, and no space for hesitation. The scream in the hallway is a catalyst, compressing time, demanding immediate action, and forcing a person to respond before the mind has fully processed the danger. For a Navy SEAL, this is both a challenge and a skill that has been honed through rigorous training. They are conditioned to act decisively, to trust instincts, and to rely on preparation when circumstances unfold in an instant. Each second counts, and each choice can determine the outcome of a situation. The mind must analyze, anticipate, and execute almost simultaneously, balancing speed with accuracy. In a hallway where the source of danger is uncertain, split-second decisions become a dance between caution and urgency, between observation and movement, between survival and risk. The nature of a split-second decision is paradoxical. It is both instinctive and calculated, reactive yet informed. In the moments immediately following a scream, the brain processes multiple streams of information at once. The location of the sound, the possible position of the threat, the condition of the person in distress, the configuration of the hallway, and potential escape routes. Each piece of information is assessed and integrated almost automatically. The SEAL's training ensures that reflexes are guided by experience and strategic thinking. This means that action is neither blind nor reckless. Instead, it is precise, deliberate, and fluid. When danger is immediate and visible, decisions can be made with confidence. When the threat is unseen, every step and every pause must be carefully calculated, yet executed with speed, because hesitation can be fatal. Adrenaline is a key factor in split-second decision-making. It heightens awareness, accelerates reaction times, and sharpens the senses. However, it also carries the potential to overwhelm if not controlled. The scream triggers a surge of adrenaline in anyone who hears it, preparing the body for action. A trained operator uses this energy, channeling it into controlled responses. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, Vision narrows to focus on relevant details, and the mind enters a heightened state of alert. In these moments, split-second decisions are not made from panic, but from a state of acute readiness. The challenge is to translate heightened perception into effective action, turning instinct into strategy and fear into measured response. The environment dictates the nature of the decision. In a hallway, the space is constrained, movement is restricted, and the lines of sight are limited. This forces decisions to be tactical and precise. Should one advance toward the sound or take cover? Should one attempt to communicate with the person in distress or focus on locating the threat? Every action has consequences, and the margin for error is narrow. The SEALs training prepares them to navigate these constraints instinctively. They assess angles, cover, and potential hazards while simultaneously interpreting auditory and visual cues. The decision is a blend of immediate sensory input, learned judgment, and anticipatory reasoning. Each split-second choice is layered, complex, and critical. The psychological dimension of these decisions is equally significant. Split-second choices are made under immense pressure, often with lives at stake. The mind must filter fear and adrenaline, prioritize options, and commit to a course of action without hesitation. The scream in the hallway amplifies urgency, compressing the perception of time and heightening the stakes. Even small delays can escalate risk. The individual must reconcile the unknown with the immediate, balancing caution with boldness. Every step, every motion, every tactical choice is informed by a combination of experience, training, and instinct. Mistakes can be costly, but indecision can be deadly. Split-second decisions also require anticipation of potential consequences. A single choice triggers a cascade of outcomes that must be mentally mapped in real time. Advancing too quickly could expose the responder to unseen threats. Waiting too long could endanger the person in distress. The SEAL evaluates possibilities continuously, predicting enemy behavior, assessing escape routes, and adjusting tactics with each passing moment. This mental agility is a hallmark of elite training. What seems like an instantaneous decision is actually the culmination of years of preparation, conditioning, and disciplined practice. The scream in the hallway is not just a sound. It is a test, a challenge that compresses time and demands mastery of instinct, strategy, and courage simultaneously. The aftermath of a scream is as revealing as the scream itself. Once the sound fades, the hallway returns to a quiet that feels unnatural, almost suspended. Every shadow, every echo, and every corner seems to hold meaning. The silence that follows a scream is not empty. It is charged with tension, reflection, and realization. It forces those who were present to confront what just happened, to process the emotions and events that unfolded in a matter of seconds. For a Navy SEAL, the aftermath is an extension of the response, a moment to analyze, adjust, and understand what occurred. Even after the immediate threat has passed, the mind continues to work, assessing decisions, interpreting signs, and preparing for what might still happen. The scream leaves a trail, a set of clues that reveal not only the immediate danger, but also the human instinct it provoked. In these moments, the scream's impact lingers in the minds of witnesses. The fear and urgency that it sparked do not dissipate instantly. Instead, they imprint themselves, creating heightened awareness and a lasting memory of the event. For someone trained to notice detail, the aftermath is an opportunity to gather intelligence. Each mark on the walls, each scuff on the floor, every overturned object becomes evidence. The mind reconstructs the timeline of events, the initial scream, the direction from which it came, the reactions it prompted, and the subsequent movements. The hallway, once a simple corridor, becomes a map of action and consequence, each element providing insight into what occurred and why. Observing and interpreting these details is crucial because understanding the aftermath informs future responses, improves preparedness, and reinforces the lessons learned from the immediate crisis. The aftermath also reveals the emotional landscape of those involved. Panic, fear, shock, and relief mingle in subtle ways. Even trained operatives feel a ripple of adrenaline that does not immediately subside. The scream exposes vulnerabilities, not just of those in danger, but of those responding. Human instinct is raw and unfiltered in the face of sudden crisis. The person who screamed may be trembling, gasping, or frozen with fear, while the responder may feel an intense surge of control, focus, or moral urgency. These reactions provide insight into the human condition, illustrating how instinct, training, and emotion intersect in high-stakes situations. In a hallway, where proximity heightens tension, these emotional cues are magnified. Every subtle movement, facial expression, and tone of voice contributes to the understanding of the event and its consequences. The aftermath is also about perspective. From the outside, a scream might seem like a single isolated incident, but from within the space, it is part of a complex sequence of cause and effect. Each sound, step, and reaction has shaped what happens next. The SEAL, having navigated the immediate threat, now reflects on the precision of their own decisions, the effectiveness of their actions, and the timing of each movement. This reflection is not idle. It is analytical and methodical. The aftermath allows lessons to be drawn, strategies to be refined, and instincts to be sharpened. Every event leaves traces that, if carefully examined, can prevent future mistakes and improve responses under pressure. Another aspect revealed in the aftermath is the interplay between human perception and reality. The scream may have created an impression of chaos, yet the space and circumstances often contain more information than was initially perceived. Sounds echo differently, shadows shift, and small details that were overlooked become significant. The SEAL interprets these signals, understanding that the unseen threat may still be present or that the environment itself may contain hazards or clues. This heightened attention to detail is critical because it allows for comprehensive situational awareness even after the immediate danger has passed. The aftermath is a continuation of vigilance, a phase in which observation, assessment, and preparation remain essential. Finally, the aftermath underscores the profound effect a single moment can have. One scream, lasting just a few seconds, can ripple through minds, bodies, and environments. It reveals instinct, tests skill, and exposes vulnerability. It alters perception, transforms space, and demands reflection. The hallway, once ordinary, becomes a site of memory, emotion, and understanding. The unseen threat, the split-second decisions, and the human response all leave an imprint, visible and invisible, in the minds of those present. The scream does not simply end. It lingers, shaping how the experience is remembered, interpreted, and learned from.